Pinos. That was, I believe, a brother to George's father, who was also a George. George Pinio had property directly across from the church here, back behind Etta Baker's, between them and the Coslin place, which was where Carol's family had for a while. So that was another Pinio property. And George also had a piece of property up by Luxett Lane. So I'm not sure where the house was, but I believe it was down here. Okay, so one of the jewels I found on this, since this is kind of a cultural event tonight, it's a poem by George Pinio, and I believe he was in the 9th grade on 1939 when he did this. A lot of the information here came from 1939. He would have been a 9th grader, and so he was going to school over in Anacortes. But this is his poem. Guimas, the Isle of Liberty. On Guimas, the Isle of Liberty, of land of golden corn, if I should have to leave, I sure would be forlorn. When at the dance hall, we never dance too hard until the band plays the tune, Annie Lore out on Gord. I don't know what that means. We never are so foolish to give a girl a hug until we all take a snort out of the old brown jug. Now, I happened to be in the woods next to the community hall yesterday, okay, and I found this bottle. It was corked, so it's prior to the screw caps, and on the embossing on it, it says, "Federal law forbids sale or reuse of this bottle." And that law came into effect in 1935, okay? And it lasted until 1964. So this is dated from sometime in between there. I think it's from 1939 when George Pinio. So
graduating from 9th grade.
9th grade. So anyway, tonight's presentation is going to be by Michael McGinnis on Banjo Eddie.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael, and I'm married to Barbara, the former school bus driver, and she actually knew Ed a lot longer than I. They were sweeties. There will be a picture later. They were sweeties when they were both teenagers. And I knew Ed, I think I met him in '83, and I first started living on the island in '84, and I moved here full time again in '95. I moved here ever since. And we played music together for 3 or 4 years before I came here. And he had the greenhouse there behind his house, and for a while there he had a kegerator out there, so it was a lively spot. And we were kind of bandaged out there because Annie was his wife, or girlfriend at the time, was home, and we were kind of bandaged out there. But anyway, we've got some slides. Most of these photos, or not slides, but photos were shown at his memorial. If you were there, was in a loop. But I'll give a little bit of backstory to some of them. So, and I guess that's the new Billy Mitchell's silhouette there. And this is the greenhouse I was talking about right here. Okay, it's just like
doubled up on me.
Okay.
Oops. All right.
That was him in front of that greenhouse I was just talking about. Go ahead. And then when he was born in Seattle, and he was the fourth of 4 kids, and he had an older sister, just a little bit older than him, who had Down syndrome, and he was kind of the protector of, as I understand it from him. And then he had 2 older brothers, and he was always kind of a willful person, I believe. And his dad was an alcoholic, and I think by the time he was born, his mother was also. And he was the 4th baby. He was the last one, and I think he was truly like unplanned. And his dad wasn't real appreciative of him being around. He didn't treat him very well. Didn't give him any reason to have any kind of self-esteem at all. And so Ed became really willful. I remember my favorite story, no, it's really sad, is his dad used to go and park in the parking lot of taverns and leave Ed in the car and go in there for hours. Well, when Ed was about 6 one time, he left the keys in the ignition, and Ed started the car up and drove it off and ran into some stuff. And that was the last time he did that to him. So that's the kind of person he was. Like, he took charge if he really had to. And so when he was about, I think 12 or maybe 13, in the mid-70s, and his sister died, and I think for it had been a year or two, and he was really feeling well, starting to get into junior high school. And he was already, I think he got caught breaking and entering and stealing cars and not going to very darn much school and stuff. And his mom and dad realized that he probably didn't have a good future ahead of him in the neighborhood they lived in. And this old guy here was evidently some kind of minor league gangster from Chicago. His name was Duke. And he was a friend of I think of Dad's. And anyway, he was a very large guy, lived by himself, and kind of an old school, guy, gentleman, sort of, old school, very rough, like Ed was. And Ed was, I think, 13 when he moved in with this guy, and he lived with him for about a year, I think, and then they had a big dispute, and Ed moved out, and he had some trouble then with a couple of people trying to get him run off the island because he was a little bit wild, and he was at 14. He was pretty young to be living by himself, but it all worked out anyway. And so, and he ended up. Let's see the next one. He ended up living. This was he lived at a cabin up across the street from the community. I mean the church or the school playground, as many of you know. And this is a picture of that, and that's my wife, and she's like 19 or maybe 20, and that's Ed when he's 16 or 17. And that's them down there again. And this is a really bad picture that I guess Barbara said she stole from some former girlfriend, made it and gave it to Banjo, and then she ended up with it anyway. So he's even younger there. And then this is in the old kitchen at the house across the street. And I like this picture, but this is Barbara's son, Lars, when he's like 2.5 or something. And this is what Ed used to look like every summer. He would go for the, so tan that you thought he was like half native when he was really about 16th or something like that. Every summer, he'd lay out there for hours and he'd get tan just like that. But then he finally quit doing that. This is the Dog Island Boys. You might recognize some of these people, maybe not. This is Danny McCracken. That's Jeff Winston. That's Ron Flint. There's Kit, and there's Ed. They didn't play in that configuration in public too many times, but they did one time as Doc Piley and the Creosotes. And this is Danny and Eddie, and I'm not sure where the heck it is, to be honest with you. That was a nice picture. Okay. And I don't know, this is Ed, obviously. I don't know who these two people are. If anybody knows, can even guess who that old guy is there? Oh, I call him old now. He's probably about Timmy Giant. It looks like he has a name on there, but anyway, I just thought that was a really strange picture, and I was kind of curious if somebody knew who that was with the critic, but I guess not. Okay.
Keep your voice up.
Okay. Now here's a picture of Ed on the Vils hay truck, helping him hay and providing a little entertainment there. And there's Danny there standing there, kind of, I think, embarrassed actually. He's giving a PA for those in the back who can't see it.
Here's Vince.
And I'm not sure who this either, though. Barbara and I are thinking it's Donna, Kit's first wife, but I don't know if it.
I think it's Pam Windling, right?
Pam Windling? Could be.
Windling, is that how you said it?
I don't know. Okay.
Sam?
Pam.
That's not Donna.
Doesn't look
It's
like
not Donna?
I
Okay.
think it's Pam.
Anyway, and that, of course, is Ed. They're playing volleyball somewhere. I don't know. But I thought he was looking pretty classic there for Ed. And I'm not sure whose place that is, where the picture was taken. but that was there's the original picture, but that was taken at his house after he passed. Okay.
That's a reflection.
Yeah. And there he is, a sweet young thing again. And he started playing music really young. His brother John Al had a guitar and played it for a while, and Ed just picked it up and in a couple of weeks was already playing better than John Al. Really irritated him. And then he moved to Guaymas and he played the guitar, and he went to school the first day of school in 7th grade, and his brand new school. He'd never been there, didn't know any of these people. And this is 1973 or something like that. He went to school with a mohawk. 7th grade, and that, of course, in 73. He made a mark. Everybody remembered him. And you can't really tell, but that's the guitar he had made from the money he got when he got his hand ripped up in a fishing accident. They told him he'd never play the guitar again. And he got both of these fingers pretty much degloved. I think the skid managed to stay on the ends just enough that they pushed it back down. They packed it up in ice and flew him off, of course, and operated on him and stuff. And at the time, they told him that was the end of his playing career. So after he got the check from him for that, then he had this fellow Rob Gerdes who used to live on the island build that guitar right there. That's his house where he passed right there. And this was Annie. A lot of you might remember her, Burnham Bailey. She worked over at Christensen. She lived with Ed for 12 or 13 years. And she was a really good force in his life. And you can see he looks pretty happy and healthy right there. And this is Annie again, and her sister Jenny, who also passed, who had a voice of an angel. She was just a sweetheart. I don't know where that picture was taken, to be honest with you. And does anybody recognize that house here? I think it's on Guaymas, but at first I thought maybe it was your house, Adam, but it's not, is it?
I don't think so. Is it Sue's? Sue Everett's? No?
No, he's too young for that. I don't know. Oh, it might be though. Look out there. Maybe.
From McCracken? Sounds like somebody said that.
Oh, okay.
Looks like maybe water behind us.
Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe it is McCracken's. That makes sense. Yep.
No, I don't think so.
No, you don't think so. Okay, anyway. And I like this picture because it shows one of probably 2 times in 25, 30 years he lived there that he actually had enough firewood to last more than a week. There's that 20 acres across the street there. He would go over there like every 3 or 4 days and find standing dead and drag it back on his shoulder. And I kid you not, he did that the whole time he lived there. And Tom can testify to that too. And it's up on Guaymas Mountain there. See? And this is in my junky front yard, my little dog. It's my 50th birthday. The old bus there from 1951 that Barbara had to have at the auction at the Lost Cars is now on Orcas at Bruce's house, if anybody remembers Batman Bruce. And it started after 14 years, too. There he is with Annie again in his front room. I don't know whose dog that is. And this is pretty much his favorite dog he ever had, Woody. He's a great dog. Got run over chasing a squirrel. I don't know who those folks are. I think that's a friend of hers from college, but I won't swear to it. And this is the head of the landlords. I think he's actually the youngest child. His name is Andy Baum, and he's really good to Ed. This is one of the boys that he went to high school with. This been coming up here for 28 years or something like that. His name is Ollie, and that's out in Ed's front yard. And this is him getting some fish from Arnie, getting ready to feed everybody. There's usually anywhere from 8 to 15 guys there when they come up for that weekend. And Barbara has his hat now. It fits her great. And this This is that pump that used to be out in front of his house. Well, he had to take it off there because, you know, he had a real casual lifestyle, but he could still worry like anybody. And he decided the FDA or EPA or somebody was gonna come over and see that there. Somebody's gonna report it to him. They're gonna make him take it up and dig up all that, you know, all the old tanks and all that stuff. He thought, oh, that would be so expensive. He didn't really hate for that to happen to the boys, so he took this thing away from there altogether so nobody would know it was a gas station, and he put it up by the greenhouse. Now it's just a work of art. This is brother John Al, the middle brother, and that's his son, who actually has Ed's old banjo now. He has actually one of Dad's guitars and one of Ed's old guitars as well. So
that's Ed's brother?
no, yeah, it's Ed's brother right there, John Al, who's 4 years older, I think, something like that. And this is Ed over at that nephew's place. He lived outside of Wenatchee, and they were on a hike, and he absolutely loved being up there in the mountains and in the woods, and where it's nice and peaceful like that. You see, he's feeling pretty good there. Now, here he is with his last dog, Lily, and his boarder at the time, Jorge, in front of an American flag. That's just a,
Did I miss one?
I don't think so, did you? That's just a picture of him looking pretty good, and he looks nice and pink, you know. One of those guys, you know. Okay. And this is a sign, one year when the boys all came up, they decided to make a tiki bar, kind of in, I guess they were popular, and also somehow I think we got talking about that fellow that lived down at the end of Edens and made tiki bars.
Westman Haver.
Yeah, Weston Haber. Yeah, Bar remembers him too. Anyway, so they made this really cool tiki bar, and they put this sign on there and everything. And for some reason, it ended up burning the darn thing up. But anyway, he saved this sign, and it was on the thing there, and the landlords really hoped it could stay there, but somebody decided to come by and take it. So I don't know what's happened to it.
So where did he get his banjo? You said he bought his guitar. How did he get a banjo?
Jeff Winston, who's in Europe somewhere tonight, he loaned him the money to buy that particular banjo. The one he'd had before that, I think Jeff was largely responsible for that one too, to be honest with you. And Ed had this porch in front of his house that he had built out of the side cuts from logs. So he had all these shims and stuff under there so everything could stay nice and level. It was one of my favorite stories because Arnie, his neighbor, Arnie Beal, came over as he was building that and said, you know, Ed, this just ain't gonna work. None of this stuff's square or flat or, you know, or dimensional or nothing. So he came back 2 days later and Ed had a deck laying there, you know. It wasn't perfect, but it was usable. And he said, wow, I guess I was wrong. Well, after all those shims started breaking and everything, it started getting up pretty wild. And this fellow came and visited from Michigan. He used to live here. Darn, I can't remember his name now. Buddy. Buddy, I forget his last name. But anyway, so he was visiting with Ed. Ed had his banjo sitting out there on the porch and had full-length boards running 12 feet or something like that. And the guy stepped on the end of this board and it launched Ed's banjo in the air like this. And then it came down right in the head and broke it right under, just past the nut. So that's how he lost that one. Then my wife had loaned him the money to buy this master tone when they were both really young, which is like, you know, cream of the crop as far as banjos go. He took it. They went on. I'm not sure exactly all the details. He always gets so irritated when he talked about this. But they went back to Minnesota, and they were playing in some bars and stuff. Him and Jeff and this other guy who lived on the island, Weedhopper. What was his name?
Jim Reed.
Jim Reed. Thank you.
No, it wasn't Jeff, it was me.
Oh, it wasn't? Oh, it was you, not Jeff. That's right. Jeff wasn't on that trip. That's right. So anyway.
The Turkey Point Bluegrass Band.
Yeah.
I still have posters.
Good. I looked see when I never seen that's something I never.
1982, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Ed was with this fellow, Jim Reed, and they were in the car. And Ed could be cantankerous, and I didn't know Jim, but I think he could be cantankerous too. And somehow he ended up kicking Ed out in the middle of a snowstorm, virtually no clothes or anything. I'm sure somehow he got back to Mikey's. I'm not sure, Mikey's relatives or something, and they never saw him or the banjo ever again. So that's how he lost that banjo. And then I think he had a long neck bacon after that, and Danny told me he lost that one in a temper tantrum on a porch when he was beating the smithereens on the porch. So he was like, yeah, a cantankerous guy sometimes.
Yeah, it was 40 below. They were staying in a mobile home north of Motley, Minnesota.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah. Falling out and
But they were driving down the road at the time.
they were renting this little double wide by Motley, and cutting firewood, and but cabin fever set in, and Jim Reed kind of did a flip, and he was a little cantankerous, Jim Reed was.
I never knew.
And thought Banjo owed him money, so he took Banjo as payment and disappeared. So Banjo had to find his way somewhere, and he got to Fargo. But then somehow he got my number and called me and said, "Mike, I'm in Fargo." He said, I'm just gonna leave, drive back to Guaymas, because I'm done visiting parents and whatever. Like, yeah, just you give me the address and I'll pick you up. So it was like 40 below in a snowstorm, and I pick him up at this place, I don't know, in Fargo, and away we went to the midnight ferry on Guaymas. It was a trip. We'd go, and he couldn't drive. I mean, he didn't have a license, but just like, hey man, I can't drive. So he'd take over the wheel watch and drive across Montana and stuff. And then we had breakfast in Missoula. It's in Missoula, Montana, and it's 12 hours from Guaymas. And we had breakfast and said, hey man, let's go. We can catch the midnight. So away we went, and we just kind of flew. And so it's Friday night, and we're on 405 going around Guaymas, just me and him in the truck, in my 77 Chevy, and this big car comes up next to us, and there's a couple of cowgirls and they're motioning off to go to the next exit, and Banjo's like, Mike, over there. And it's like, so the driver flashes Banjo and points to he's like, Mike, come on, it's the next exit. That guy, I'm driving along, I said, no, Banjo, we're catching the midnight. And we made the midnight, and by 1:45, we were playing bluegrass again.
Yep, that would be a very typical story. Thanks for the clarification.
Mention that one?
Well, yeah, that's just Banjo's basic philosophy in life at the last 20 years or so. I don't know who gave that to him. I think maybe Karen, but I won't swear to it. And this is at one of the two Flotsam festivals.
Oh, yeah.
He's got his fancy shirt on, he's all duded up. I think this is the first one. And I don't know if any of you remember the Flotsam festivals that the store and Wynn put on. And then this is the backstage of the store, back door of the store, isn't it?
There's the front.
Oh, the front. But that was before you had the rail and.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Was that actually part of the second Flotsam Jetsam thing, or is it just? I can't remember. Yeah, and I don't really remember this day exactly, but, so this is Mike here, the fellow who's just talking the story. This is Kit and Ed and Jack Sparrow, that's myself. And this is a fellow, Jade, yeah. I forget his last name.
Yeah.
Really sweetheart of a guy.
No.
Great bass player too.
Baird.
Huh?
Baird.
Jake Barrett.
Baird, okay. And this is up at the park, I'm not,
Oh, I think it,
it doubled up again. I don't remember exactly what their occasion was, but.
It wasn't the best.
It was just at the park.
I wasn't
worries.
there, I don't know, not that that means anything, but, and that's Randy playing the bass, and Jack again, and Susie Goss, and.
I think that's when they had
Adam.
that, fish,
Yeah, fundraising for the fish, right?
Yeah.
For the fish recovery,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
listed by Martis Hitches.
And Ed had a hernia, I'm not sure when, I guess it was about 2013, 2014. It kind of really screwed up his life. And he always used to burn the grass out here in the fields, and he upset people a few times doing it. And once he had the hernia, one of the ways he would make money was by having people drop brush off there, and then he'd burn it up for them later, you know. And that was a real turning point in his life, because he'd been real active, really considering up to that point. And he was always in pain, really, after that. Even after he got it fixed, he continued to always have a lot of issues. When he was up fishing with another Guaymas person, Benji, lots of you people maybe know Benji or knew Benji, they were crabbing one time, and I get, according to Ed, one of the mottos of most of the captains up there is to sleep when you're dead. So most of the time they were going around pretty sleep deprived when it was happening, you know, and he managed to step in the bite of a rope on a crab pot, and those big ones, I don't know, weigh 500, 600, 700 pounds. So it went off the edge, and he managed to grab onto the line, and they stopped it. But here, the crab pot's dangling off the edge, and he's got his foot in the bite, and he's hanging onto the rope with one other hand. And Benji was watching from up in the pilot thing, and he evidently he was in his pajamas and his slippers, and he jumped out to threw it in neutral, whatever, but not neutral because they're going to some pretty big seas, they're crabbing. And he ran down there with a knife and whacked that crab pot off just as Benji was getting ready
He
to lose.
flew out of the top house in his jammies.
Yeah. Yeah, so I said, yeah. And the slippers, don't forget. Yeah, and a big knife, evidently, it was very sharp, if you know how to use. So Ed always, then, as he got older, especially after he had the whole thing with the hernia and he didn't use himself, he had all this trouble with that whole side of his body that he'd gotten in that rope. So this shoulder drove him crazy, this hip was all screwed up, that knee and the ankle, and so the whole last 5 or 6 years, he was pretty much always in pain, regardless of how lit up he was.
Still play.
He can still play. Oh yeah, and then he had these knuckles. This one knuckle, and I think the last time you heard it, he was punching the wall. But he used to punch stoves. He'd just take things out on himself, and he had this knuckle on his right hand that I swear was.
oh, shoot.
When you say Andy was like that tall, I mean it was unbelievable. It was every time I looked at it, it would just give me the creeps, you know. And he'd put this cream on there, you know, from like this friend of ours, Dave, who put these pictures together with me. He worked for Boeing, and he'd give him this really high tech, you know, high toxic stuff for your arthritis and stuff that he got at Boeing, and it worked really well for him. But it was always scary to watch. Just having him move his fingers would make you nervous. So. But he was a survivor. And this is one of the landlord's friends came one year in this Lotus, so we had to get a picture taken. Yeah, I'm sure David gave you a copy of that. He was in front of the saw blade that Wayne had commissioned with his picture on it. And let's see the next one. And here's a little more of a close-up. I love this picture of someone too. He's got this look in his eye like, what are you looking at? I don't know if many of you probably remember Mary O'Hearn. She's a musician, singer, songwriter, kind of musician person who lived on the island. And she was telling me the story about one time she was in town somewhere playing, and she saw Ed in the audience, and for some reason, I don't know if she had an extra instrument or what, but she invited him up on the stage. So he was up on the stage, and they're playing away, and right in the middle of his song, he stopped and looked at this guy and said, "What the heck are you looking at?" Decided to invite him up after that. I think that was in the days, I have to admit, when cocaine was going around, and he sometimes would get pretty wound up, but. And this was his 60th birthday party. I forget who decorated the cake. It was up at, huh? Costco? Okay. It was up at the Farley's. And this is inside of the house when we were playing all kinds. As you can see, it was the Guaymas Orchestra that particular day, or the Guaymas String Band Orchestra or something. But,
And whose house is that?
Mike and Lauren Farley, yeah. It's just past Lori Steele's house on the left there, across from the Krakens and stuff. New galvanized roof and stuff. And so there's a picture of a little shrine we had set up at his house for a while. And that's a moonrise from over by the Bush's side, supposedly the night that Banjo was discovered. He, as far as anybody can tell, of course, they didn't do an autopsy or anything. When the coroner came, there was no indications of foul play or that he did himself in or anything like that. Jorge was the one who found him, and he was kind of, because he's got some questionability with the law and stuff, he didn't really want to be the person that called 911. So evidently, as he told, he went to and saw Yachty, and Yachty thought it'd be best not to have her involved either, so she called Kit, because he was a neighbor and he had a good reason to be there, you know. Well, she was just feeling paranoid for Jorge about, you know, their connection anyway. So I was in Ferry Line when I found out about it, and I got there before the sheriff did. And my wife also was there, and several other people, and Dave, the guy who put these pictures together, who was very good friends with his older brother. And his older brother's wound really tight, so Dave handled pretty much all the technical stuff for him, you know, and legal and all that stuff. And anyway, he was laying on the floor on his side in front of the desk and kind of had his hand like this. Looked like he died pretty peacefully, so I, you know. It looked like really he got up from his recliner. The BBC News was still on. He watched the news all the time, even when he was sleeping. You know, he had something on in the background, he was real cold and real stiff, and he just, you know. But like I say, he looked pretty peaceful. He didn't have any contortions or anything, and he the undertaker said that as far as they could tell by his lividity and stuff, the fact the way he's laying there, they had all his blood had pooled on this side, that he'd been there at least 24, probably 36 hours. So he probably died on Monday, and we found him on Wednesday. So, or during that night sometime. And Barbara may have been one of the last people to see. It may have been the last person, because I had called her up and told her, you know, he had been on none of his bouts of puking, to bring him over some milk and some Gatorade. Most seemed to work for him. But so she did, and went over and talked to him, and then, as far as I know, nobody's spoken of, haven't seen him again since then. So then the next day, nobody really noticed a fire, which several people commented that they'd noticed that, and then the next day still wasn't any fire, and Jorge was over trying to, I think, get some money from Kit that Kit owed him, and he thought, well, he'd go over there and see what Ed was doing, and discovered him. So, and so I say, the Undertaker, as far as he could tell, figured it was probably a heart attack, and it was pretty darn quick. It looked like he just stood up from his chair and went, that's what it looked like, and then hit the ground. Boom. So there wasn't, his arm didn't look like they'd been making any effort to protect him from the desk or anything, and it was a wicked, military-style desk that really could hurt you if you run into it. Which he didn't. I mean, he just fell right flat on the floor. So. Anyway, anybody have any questions? Anything they wanted to know about that I might have left out or something? Yes.
I'm just gonna spoon feed you a little
Yeah.
bit. So, it's never always about me. Anyway, I might as well. I'm just gonna join here. Excuse me.
There you go, girl.
Oh, right here. It's hard to do this once you do that, so. Anyway, so I've been back in line for about 12 years, and it was the music that brought me back. And my parents had told me that there was a Saturday night or a Friday night at the store, and there was a kind of a group of people playing music, and it was really, it was excellent. It was kind of spurred by Ed, and so I kind of begged my parents if I could move back to the island because that sounded better than Bellevue. And so played at the store a couple times. I had a electric guitar and a big powerful amplifier, which was not bluegrass. And that was fun. And then maybe a couple weeks passed and my dad said, "Oh, Eddie and those guys are playing on the porch," and they asked where you were. It's like, oh, yeah. So some of the things that I was trying to think about, it was the best. Besides my family, playing music, you guys is the best. It was intimate. It was everybody feeling one another. And it's just nice. We knew, I don't know, 100 songs?
Something like that.
100 songs. And Eddie, you told me, you knew about 200 guitar songs.
Well, another 100 anyway, yeah.
And we didn't look at music, we just played it and felt it. And I told people this at the service, that on my own I'm okay, and after Eddie I'm okay, but with those guys I could go to the moon. So, one of the last times that we played out in public is on a Sunday, October 8th, 2017. And who knows how ferries work on Sundays anyway. There was kind of a miscommunication with who was supposed to be there. So Andy did make it, which was good. And a friend of mine has a shop in town, he works on motorcycles, and he asked us if we wanted to play. And time was tight, and he had a couple other bands who were going to play. And so we did, I don't know, five or six songs, and I have a little short video of this.
I think that's it. But why isn't
Did
it?
it go away?
Let me try it again.
I think
It
you
was
want the
two,
two.
right?
Hopefully it comes back. No? I'm gonna just- That's it. This is our pal Eddie, Jack Sparrow, Mike McGinnis, Randy Reinhardt, myself, and Andy Gladish would probably be around here somewhere. And then he did show up. And just like I said, it was at Eddie's house. It was kind of a small circle, and everybody just kind of having a good time and lots of laughs. was kind of it, but thanks.
The Allisons have recently moved to the island. I don't know if anybody knows them, but they live up on Graham's Island Road farther. And Lonnie is his aunt, I think, and grandmother lived here. Isn't that right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so when he was a kid, he used to come over here, you know. And Ed was around in those days too. They're about the same age. He's a little older. And he was at his grandmother's, I think it was, and she said, and they were going to go for a walk on the beach. She said, "Well, yeah, go ahead and go for a walk." He said, "You see that guy down there without any clothes on? That's just Banjo Ed. Don't paint him."
I don't have the story, but tell us about the time he jumped off the ferry.
Well,
Yeah.
this is as I understand. Anyway, he was
Yeah.
real feisty, you know, like I've said, and somebody told me he was trying to impress a woman, which is really hard to believe, but it could be true. And it was in the old school, it was Almar, and they're coming into the dock, and as they're starting to back off, Ed dives into the water. I think he pulled off his shoes, dived into the water, swam over, and of course then they slowed down. They didn't want to get there and hurt him, right? And he climbed up the ladder. Before they could get to the dock, he went over to the dock and gave everybody a BA. And then, and I'm not sure if he got a date with the gal. I'm not sure who it was. I heard it was Ann Casperson, but
Ann
Ann Jerkovich, I think. Actually, no,
Well, I should tell that story to Ann Casperson.
yeah.
Tell her that she was mentioned.
Improperly mentioned. Yeah. Well, that was another great story. That picture I showed y'all of Duke, the old fellow that Banjo ended up moving over here with. He, when my wife actually went to high school down at Queen Anne with one of his daughters, and I think her name was Laura, and they got to talking one time. "Oh, well, my parents had a problem. Well, we should get together sometime." So Barbara said she was up here with her mom and dad, and they had probably down below Ed on the beach down there. And Duke lived down section, and Barbara said she went over there, and he was just sitting in his big chair and everything. And they came in, they introduced us, and then he was just sitting there, and he didn't know what to do with a couple of girls. He says, "Well, why don't you girls just take the guns out there and go do some shooting?" What? Go do some shooting? What? I guess they did went out there and Laura shot a few times. That was her introduction to Duke. It said every month when he got a Social Security check, they'd go to town and they'd get a taxi, and then they'd go to that bar that was at the other end from the Demopolis Hardware. It was a long, skinny bar. It was a very strange bar. When you walked in, there was just a row of stools, and that was it. There wasn't room for anything else but walking down there. And they'd go in there, and they'd get cases of wine and cases of beer, and somehow, then they'd go to the liquor store and they'd get cases of whiskey. And this is every month when he got his Social Security check. Then he'd go home and it's time to start partying. That was that picture of him. He had a bottle of whiskey in his hand here, and I guess he used to say, "Are you with me, brother?" Yeah. So, he was an interesting character. He had his 38 that he carried all the time, so he slept sitting up. He had this big, he had this big sore in his back right here, evidently. It never did heal him. And I think he was paranoid about somebody coming after him for something that happened years and years ago, So, and Ed said he'd been sitting on it so long that when you took it, and it would just wiggle like that, the barrel would. But he'd be sitting there, and he said more than once he'd seen a mouse go across the floor, and Duke would whip out his gun, bang, and kill the mouse. So they said, well, down in front of Wynn's old store there's that old telephone pole-like thing where there used to be a electric service, and Herbie used to live there, right? What's his name?
Bud Hansen.
Bud Hansen, yeah. So he lived there on this raft thing that would go up and down with the tide, and he and Duke were good friends, and Ed said all three would be walking down the beach, and the guys had been drinking them, and carrying on with each other, and Bud would say, "Oh, Duke, you can't hit a damn thing with that gun." And Duke said, well, try me. So he said he'd find a beer bottle in those days. He'd throw it up in the air, and he said, "Duke, whip that thing out." I said, virtually every time he'd shoot it out of the air, bang. Okay, now what do you think? But He said, "Wait, he took the bear with those." Well, and I don't know if anybody here remembers this, but I think in the late 60s, early 70s, he had this car that only worked in reverse, this same Duke fellow. He'd take his wife to the ferry and pick her up every day, going 20 to 25 miles an hour in reverse. In the proper side, in the proper lane to be going that direction, but not really in reverse. Yeah. So that was Ed's savior.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, I've been around long enough that remember when Ed first came to the island and was staying up at Duke's, and we were all young at that time and would go up to Duke's for music.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I can remember Duke coming to the potlucks and, of course, packing his gun. It was a different potluck at that time. I hear Duke going, But Ed, you know, we've known Ed for years, and the picture of Ed on the hay truck, Ed helped hang and helped fishing, especially hanging nets or helping going out with Arn fishing. But Ed was great in the morning. He was wonderful help, but after lunch, it was not as good. So, yeah, quite a guy.
Yeah. Well, I do remember one more Duke story that Ed told me when he was telling about how Duke had mules down there. And one day in church, he said it was. Somebody else told me they thought it was at the community hall, but I think it was probably at church. He came in just before the meeting started. He said, "Hey, if any of you are all missing your dogs, they're in a pile. They might be in a pile in my field. They were bothering my animals." So I'm claiming them off the lot. Then he just turned around and walked back out.
That's a fact.
So,
Hey, Mike?
yes.
What's gonna happen with the picture banjos? Is everybody?
I don't think it's been decided. Right now, I think it's down at the pool hall at Anchors.
Oh, up here on the.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But I you know, Jeff is over in Europe right now, so he basically is the person who commissioned it from Billy. Yeah.
Right
So, Mike.
I think we ought to commission one, the banjo we remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the one on the saw blade.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a little younger in that picture.
Yeah, no kidding. What, 21?
Yeah, like something like that. Yeah, 'cause that's from that picture about Dog Island Boys when the five of them are in the sepia tone thing. That's basically that face from that period. That's the angle. Because Billy was telling us he has to draw from a cartoon, and he basically
Right.
some kind of a pantograph thing. You know, he doesn't just come out of the top of his head. So he felt he had to have an actual picture that he could copy. So that was the best we could do as far as a face-on picture that he felt comfortable with. We tried others, but he did not.
Well, I think it looks happier there in his happier days, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
What year did he come to Guaymas?
I think it was 73, but does that sound right?
Yeah.
I think so.
How old were you then?
Huh? How old was he then?
Well,
He was born in 57.
Oh, wow.
So maybe 72.
All right, then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And his birthday was October, so he was 14 probably when he first moved here. And
Seattle?
yes, from North Seattle. Yeah, his family lived over like on 15th, over by just a few blocks from that theater that was there on 15th and 145th, I think, around 55th, the Crest or something like that.
We were filleting fish down by the ferry dock for our wedding. Daryl Paul was gonna smoke them, and we were done fishing, but we looked really kind of official for some reason, and we were walking up and there were these three people in line, and they rolled the window down, and each had cash and said, "Who do we pay to leave Guaymas?" Banjo and I were kind of walking, and we looked at one another. Should we? No, he's like, nah.
Okay, well, I guess I've talked enough. Yes.
Could you,
When I first met Banjo, no idea who he was. He's on a bicycle, drunker than Cooter Brown. I look at him, I don't know the guy. I look at him, I got a pickup truck, I'm going, I don't think you need to be riding that bike. He looks at me and says, yeah? I said, well, I'll take you on, we'll throw it in the back of my truck. Well, he must have cussed me out. All the way to the house, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. Called me all kinds of MFers. Yeah. I get into the house, he goes out, and then there was that peace and respect, love you. And I'm going, who in the hell is this guy?
can you say what the names of the bands were that you all played in?
Well, there was the dog piling and the creosotes. And
Say it
the
again.
dog piling. Dog.
Dog
piling. Spelled P-Y-L. And then,
DOC,
huh?
DOC piling.
Yeah, dog, yeah.
PY.
That's what I said, P-Y-L.
Dog?
Piling and their creosotes. That was, I think, a Jeff Winston name. And what would you guys call yourself in Minnesota?
The Turkey Point Bluegrass Band.
And let's see.
The Dog Island Boys.
And we were the Dog Island. They were the Dog Island Boys. Actually, that picture was as much as Dog Island Boys. Then.
Yeah, we played at the Magic Skagit to
Yeah.
to
To
save
From the-
to prevent the nuclear plant
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Skagit.
yeah. And that was the last time that the guy who stole Ed's banjo was seen, was at that particular event. He got off the stage pretty fast.
Almost colorful.
Almost colorful, yeah. We called it that for a while. And Island Angels for a little while.
One too many.
One too many. Yeah, that was probably the name when we at the end, I guess.
Banjo Eddie and One Too Many.
Yeah.
When Darrell Berg was here, he could talk anybody into anything, you know, Pastor Berg,
Uh-huh.
was here at the church for
Uh-huh.
so long. He talked Banjo Eddie into coming and playing for us. And he was there, he looked a bit nervous. Well then, but I remember Ed Robb, I played with him once too.
Uh-huh.
And then Dan Burnett and I tried to talk Banjo to playing again when Dan's dad was preaching.
Uh-huh.
And he came as far as the side door, but he didn't make it in.
Well.
Okay, thanks for all.